The day Emeka Okafor washed his wife's wrapper in the backyard, three things happened. Old Mama Chidima saw him from over the clay fence and pressed her hand flat against her chest like she was catching her heart before it fell out. Chukwuebuka, his neighbor and the self-appointed keeper of the compound's dignity, dropped his newspaper, not set it down, dropped it, and stood up from his plastic chair as if what he was witnessing was a fire that needed to be put out. And Emeka's own mother, who had come visiting from Ozubulu that morning and had not yet announced herself, stood at the back door with her wrapper tied to her chest, watching her son scrub suds into a yellow cotton fabric with both hands. Nobody said anything, yet. That was the thing about Oguta town. It never said anything, yet. It watched first, it stored, it remembered. Emeka wrung the fabric with a calm that belonged to a man doing something he had done 100 times, because he had. He shook it open, snapped it twice in the air the way his wife Adeze had taught him. So it doesn't crease na, snap it properly, and carried it to the line they had strung between the guava tree and the window louver. He pegged it. He went inside. He did not see Mama Chidima. He did not see Chukwuebuka. He did not see his mother's face. But Oguta had seen him. It started, as most things in that town did, with a conversation at the borehole. Women carried their buckets there in the early morning while the air was still cool, and they talked. The borehole conversation was the original social media, fast, opinionated, and almost impossible to correct once something had been posted. That Emeka, Mama Chidima said, lowering her bucket. She said only those two words and let them breathe. The other women knew what she meant. You always knew what Mama Chidima meant. The rapper, said a younger woman, Ngozi, who lived in the flat opposite Emeka's compound. The rapper, Mama Chidima confirmed. And it is not the first time, Ngozi added. I have seen him carry her food flask to the gate when she is going to her shop. I have seen him braid the children's hair when she traveled to Owerri. She paused. He braids hair well, oh. This last observation landed with some complexity. A few women were quietly impressed. Most chose not to be. What kind of man braids his daughter's hair? An older woman named Lolo asked. She had been married 3 times, buried 2 of those husbands, and considered herself an authority on the nature of men. That is the mother's work. What is doing him? Adeze has done something to him, Mama Chidima said, with the certainty of a woman who has already concluded and is now simply narrating. You people are here defending it. That girl has tied him, mark my words. But they look happy, Ngozi said quietly. Nobody answered her. In Oguta, happiness was not proof of anything. Emeka was 34 years old and had the kind of face that seemed younger when he was laughing. He drove a tricycle, a keke, for work, covered the market route 6 days a week, and came home every evening smelling of exhaust fumes and dust and effort. He was not a rich man. He was not a man anyone pointed to and said that one will go far, the way they said it about Dr. Amara's son, or the Igwe's nephew, who had started an oil company in Port Harcourt. But he was a man who came home. That, Adeze had told her sister once, was rarer than people understood. She had married him 7 years ago against the quiet hesitation of her family, who had wanted somebody with a car, somebody with something behind his name. Her father had not refused. He was too tired and too kind a man to refuse. But he had asked her twice, softly, Are you sure, Adeze? The man drives keke. And she had said yes, she was sure, because she had watched Emeka for 2 years before she agreed to anything, and she had seen things she was looking for. She had seen that he listened when she talked. Not the nodding kind of listening, the kind men did while thinking of something else, but the kind where he would bring something up 3 days later. You said the fabric seller on Imo Street was cheating people. I saw her today and yes, she reweighs when she thinks you're not looking. The kind that meant he had carried what she said inside him and walked around with it. She had seen that he did not think her work was small. She sold fabric from a stall in the market, nothing grand, but he spoke about her shop with the same weight he used when discussing anything else that mattered. He never said, your little business. It was always your shop, or sometimes Adeze's place, spoken to others with a particular flatness that meant, this thing is real. Do not diminish it in front of me. And she had seen, on a day she was sick, a bad malaria, the kind that hollowed you out, that he had come home, assessed the situation, tied his son to his back, Nigerian style, even though his son was already 5 and heavy, and spent the afternoon managing the house as if it were simply a thing that needed to be done. No theatre, no expectation of praise, just done. She had known then. She had carried that day around with her like a smooth stone in her pocket. Chukwuebuka was the one who finally said it to Emeka's face. It was a Sunday. They were outside after church, the compound quiet, children playing in the red dust, the smell of onions and palm oil drifting from several kitchens at once. Emeka was washing his keke, hosing it down, scrubbing the body with a sponge. Chukwuebuka came and stood nearby in the way that meant he intended to talk. Emeka waited. You know, Chukwuebuka began, leaning against the wall. I look at you sometimes and I think, this man has forgotten himself. Emeka wrung the sponge. How do you mean? What you are doing, how you are doing, running around for that woman, washing, cooking, carrying. He
Emeka,
shook his head
we are saying she
slowly,
has done something
with the
to you.
sadness of a
Nobody
man
behaves this
delivering
way unless a
difficult
woman
news.
has used jazz. Your mother is
People are
worried. She
talking,
came
my
to me.
brother.
Chuku.
Let them talk. Emeka, he lowered his voice. We are saying she has done something to you. Nobody behaves this way unless a woman has used jazz. Your mother is worried. She came to me. Emeka stood up and turned off the hose. He looked at Chukwuebuka for a long moment without malice. Chukwu, he said, when was the last time you sat down with your wife and asked her how she was doing? Not about the children, not about money. Her, how she is doing. Chukwuebuka blinked. What kind of question? When last did you eat food she cooked and tell her it was good? Not grunt, not just finish the plate. Tell her. He picked up his sponge again. When last did she laugh because of you? Chukwuebuka's face was doing something complicated. I am not her woman, he said finally, falling back on the solid ground of outrage. I am her husband. I know, Emeka said. I am Adeze's husband too. He turned back to the keke. But I am also her person. Is there a law that says I cannot be both? Chukwuebuka left. He did not say goodbye. He went back to his flat and sat in the sitting room where his wife was ironing his shirts, and he looked at her for a long moment, and then he looked away, and he did not say anything. But the question had gone in somewhere, and it stayed. Emeka's mother was harder. She came to him that evening in the kitchen while Adeze was bathing the children. She sat on the low stool by the back door and watched him check the soup on the fire. Adeze had started it before the bath. He was finishing it, and her face had the look of a woman who has rehearsed something. Emeka, sit down. He turned down the flame and sat on the bench across from her. I raised you, she said. I know who you are. I know you are not a weak man. I know this. She pressed her palms together. But what people are saying outside, my son, it is damaging your name. A man who is always inside doing woman's work, always running for the wife. It is not the way. It gives people ammunition. You have a son watching you. What are you teaching him? Emeka was quiet. I am teaching him, he said slowly, to not be afraid to love someone. His mother made a sound in her throat. Mama, he said, you and Papa were married for 31 years. When he was sick, the 3rd year of your marriage, when he had that bad chest, who cooked? Who fetched water? Who carried him to the clinic when the Okada man was not available? She was very still now. You did, he said gently, and nobody called you weak. Nobody said you had done jazz on yourself. They said you were a good wife. They said you loved your husband. He leaned forward. Why is the same love different when it comes from me? What part of me is supposed to die so that people are comfortable? His mother looked at her hands for a long time. She did not capitulate. She was not a woman built for quick capitulation. But something in her face had moved, shifted like furniture rearranged in a room. The room looked different, even if you couldn't say exactly what had changed. She reached out and patted his knee once, and then she said, "Your soup will burn," and stood up, and that was all. It was not forgiveness of the town's position. It was not agreement, but it was something, a hairline crack in a very old wall. Adeze heard pieces of it over time. People did not always tell her directly, but sound traveled in compounds. She heard what they called her husband. She heard the word for a man who had let himself be conquered, who was too soft, too domestic, too wrapped up in his wife. She knew the word. She had grown up in this culture too. She had heard it aimed at other men, sometimes laughing, sometimes in real contempt. She sat with it privately in a way she did not fully show Emeka, because she knew if she showed him all of it, he would feel guilty for what he was not guilty of. But she watched him more carefully after she understood what he was enduring. She watched him say good morning to Mama Chidinma across the fence, even though the woman looked through him. She watched him walk through the compound with his head up, not performing strength, just inhabited by it. The quiet kind, the kind that didn't need an audience. She watched him sit with their son and explain, without being asked, why he was helping Mama with the cooking. Because she is tired, and she is my person. And when your person is tired, you help them. Their son, Chijindu, had looked at his father and then looked at his mother and then said, "Okay," the way children did when something made intuitive sense to them, and gone back to his toy car. She thought, watching him, that the people outside were looking for a performance of strength that her husband had never felt the need to perform. And she thought that she was, quietly, every single day, one of the luckiest women she knew. She never told him that in those exact words, but she told him in the way she told him, setting his water out before he woke, the way he liked it, slightly warm. Sending him voice notes when he was on the road, not long ones, just, "Ride safely, nah." Defending him once, calmly, at the borehole when she happened to be there, and Mama Chidinma made a remark about her husband being too housewifely. Adeze had set her bucket down and looked at Mama Chidinma and said, without raising her voice, "My husband has never raised his hand to me. He has never made me feel like I am a burden to him. He has never made my work feel small. If the price of that is people calling him a name, then I am grateful he is willing to pay it. And I pray your daughters find men willing to pay the same." She picked up her bucket and left. Ngozi, who was there, told someone, who told someone else. The story moved through Oguta the way stories did. Not everyone changed. Mama Chidima still watched the fence sometimes with that expression. The word was still used in certain conversations, accompanied by a certain laugh. And Emeka's name was sometimes attached to it by people who did not know him and did not need to. Some people were simply not in the market for revision. They had built their understanding of the world carefully over decades, and they were not about to take it apart over one man with a sponge at a clothesline. Lolo at the borehole still maintained that something was not right about the whole thing, and that time would show them all. But Ngozi's husband, without mentioning why, began helping her with the children's bath on nights she came home late from her hair salon. He didn't make a thing of it. He just appeared in the bathroom doorway and said, "Go and rest. I'll do it." And she stood there for a moment, unable to move because she was not used to that particular sentence. And then she went and sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the sound of him managing it, and felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was tight. Chukwuebuka, over the course of several months, developed a habit of sitting in the kitchen doorway while his wife cooked. Not helping, he was not there yet, but sitting, talking, asking about her day in a way that was clumsy and new, and not yet entirely convincing, but was, unmistakably, an attempt. His wife noticed. She did not comment on it because she was a wise woman, and she knew that commenting would end it. She just answered his questions and cooked and waited. And Emeka's mother, who had gone back to Ozubulu without finishing the argument, called him 3 weeks later on a Sunday evening. She talked about nothing for a while: the yam harvest, a cousin's naming ceremony, the price of kerosene. And then, near the end, she said, "Your wife is fine?" "She is fine, Mama." "And the children?" "They are well." A pause. "Good," she said. "Tell her I said she should rest well." Another pause, thinner this time. "Tell her I said she married a good man." Emeka stood in the doorway of his house with the evening light coming orange across the compound, and his wife's voice floating out from somewhere inside, singing something low and formless to the baby. He held the phone to his ear and said nothing for a moment. "I'll tell her, Mama." He went inside and the door closed, and Oguta continued being Oguta, slow to change, long in memory, not fully wrong and not fully right, carrying its beliefs the way towns always carried them, heavily and not always aware of the weight.